Welcome to the Four Visions Market Podcast, a space built on the principles of integrity and reciprocity. Together, we will engage in thought-provoking conversations about plant medicines, why these plants are coming out of the rainforests, jungles, and mountains after thousands of years, and what it means to be in right relationship with the ancestral wisdom cultures and guardians of these traditions. I'm your host, Mariah, founder and director of Four Visions Market. This podcast is the natural evolution in our commitment to providing you, our tribe, with incredible resources to support you on your healing journey through plant medicines. Welcome home.
Welcome back, Four Visions family. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Four Visions podcast. I'm so happy to bring you a wonderful conversation today, and I feel very excited and blessed to be joined by Alexandra Carelli. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Alexandra is a woman walking a spiritual path with a master's in marriage family therapy and many, many years on the plant path and a lot of incredible wisdom to share with our community. So I'm really excited to hear from you today and to get to drop in and dive into a beautiful conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And I just want to start by thanking you for all of the work that you're doing in the world and for holding this space for all of this wisdom and information to be shared with so many beautiful people. And I know this work is so needed right now. It's always needed, but right now I think we all know it's important. So thank you so much for the space you're holding and creating the space for all of us to share.
Thank you so much for that. And I also just acknowledge, that you reached out to me for this episode because, you were really calling in people who have special and important messages to share and complement our community and nourish these episodes, the podcast, but because the podcast really is this place of complementary resources for our community that are working with all of these tools. And so I really just thank you for knowing that you needed to come on and that you had something to share with our listeners. And I'm very excited to hear what that is today.
Oh, yes.
So let's begin by learning a little bit more about your journey and your background and sharing with those who maybe are not familiar with who you are and what you do, a little bit about your altar, what you're tending to, and your mission in this life.
Yes. So I always begin my story, and I really love to just root my own personal mythology in my childhood, where I grew up in New England and spent a lot of time as a kid in the forest. And I would be in the forest at the creek and with the birch trees and the skunk cabbage and always like pulling the birch bark off of the trees and, plucking the cabbage leaves and making it into potions with the creek water and enjoying the lady slipper flowers in the forest and the snakes and the frogs and just really feeling that dark earth of the forest in that place where I grew up. And so I think that connection to nature that I was so gifted with early in life really grounded my spiritual practice for the rest of my life. And as sort of an adolescent, I had this experience of what I consider to be like spontaneously starting to meditate. I was maybe 11 or 12, and I would put on like ambient classic rock music and light incense and just lay on the floor in my bedroom and allow my consciousness to just drift. And I would meet these edges in my consciousness that would like almost scare me. Like I was like, wow, I'm going so far, and I would have to pull myself back. And then I would do it again and just continue this process of exploration. And that sort of evolved into, an early introduction into psychedelics and plant medicines as a young teenager. And once I started that journey and the plants started to open my mind, there was really no turning back. And so I was very clear from around age 13 or 14 that I had a mission. I was here to do something in particular. And I wasn't always fully clear on exactly what that was, but there was this deep drive inside me to really carve my own path and find a new way of relating to a reality that in so many ways felt just off to me. And I think so many of us grew up in family systems and cultural systems that were not serving to our uniqueness or to our spiritual tendencies or our unique ways of being. And so I felt that. And there was this drive from these lessons, from these early expanded states of consciousness to really learn how to find my way in this world. And that sort of continued. I found the practice of yoga and meditation around 18, and then sort of started my own personal healing journey in my early 20s with studying Ayurveda and deepening into plant medicine and different sort of holistic healing modalities, we'll say, getting really into herbalism, gardening as much as I possibly could, growing huge gardens. I spent a lot of time in my late 20s, really off the grid, just living very close to nature. And in those experiences, I have this profound sense that it really shifted something in my vibration. And I really draw on that time in my late 20s, living really off the grid and close to the earth. I draw a lot of my inspiration and just source a lot of that benevolent power from that time. So that was, kind of all happening. I started working with plant medicine ceremonially in my late 20s, around 27. So it was about 10 years ago where I started to learn, just begin to drink ayahuasca and wachuma and travel down to Peru and learn that way of being with these beings. And then in my early 30s, it was like a crisis moment, like a tower moment, where there had been all of this spiritual journey and all of these huge mystical experiences and adventures and initiations, but I hadn't healed the trauma that was underneath that I was trying to get at and trying to heal. So there was a bit of a tower moment in my early 30s, and I began to do therapy and really learn about that and learn about my inner child and understand dissociative states of consciousness and kind of what had happened in my life that was challenging. And I got so deep into that process, and it started to change who I was so much, so powerfully. I started to feel this sense of integration in my being in such a powerful way that I got my master's in marriage and family therapy and began to pursue, what does it look like for me to support others in this journey of transformation? And now I'm getting a PhD in transpersonal psychology. Dream work is really my primary focus over the last 10 years since I first landed in Nevada City. Actually, it was exactly 10 years ago in July 2014. So almost to this day, when I first landed in Nevada City, I had my first big dream, which is like a dream that is totally outside the realm of time and space. It's not just a processing of the subconscious. It's something that sometimes feels like more of a gift. And in that dream, a teacher came to me and shared information with me. And since that time, my dream world has just come alive and showed me so many things that we could spend the whole podcast just talking about my dream experiences, but I'm sure we want to talk about other things too. So now I'm applying that into my academic studies and really focusing on shamanic indigenous culture and the ways in which traditional cultures hold and work with dreams as our guides and as how we make decisions, learn about what is happening and how to orient ourselves to reality, to heal. And that's kind of where we are today.
Beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing more about your background, and it's such a beautiful path that you have been on, and there's a lot of threads there that I want to deepen into. And let's start first with this element. I just want to highlight this element of, in your journey, working with the plants and doing a lot of deep ceremonial work, and then looking for a resource to really go deeper into the psyche and into the day-to-day, and the decision to seek therapy as a tool and a resource, because I've been really reflecting on this a lot in my own studies, and obviously, it needs to be the right person to guide and hold that container. But one thing about, doing so much medicine work is, in the journey, we have these profound connections and information that comes to us. And sometimes the application of those, very esoteric messages and bodies of information can be very challenging. And we often find ourselves grappling with the process of true application of change and transformation within the being. And so even if we have this profound understanding of where the trauma comes, which is a very common experience in medicine ceremonies, to go back to a memory or to re-experience the trauma, or to have something from the past resurface that we haven't thought about for many, many years. These are all very common to be able to really understand and connect the dots. And the healing takes place in the medicine too, within our communion. But then when we go back into the world, and this is something people come to me a lot, where if they're doubting the medicine, they'll say, like, it didn't work for me because I'm back in my life and I'm still, acting the same patterns out, and I'm still having the same dysfunction or the same, disharmony in my relationships. And it's even though I see the trauma and I see how it's moving through me and how I'm reliving those patterns, being able to interface with those patterns and disrupt the patterns and really feed a new thought form to be able to transform, our lives, it can be very challenging. And I love that, just hearing a little bit about your path, how this psychology aspect and the therapy came after deep studies with the medicine and working with the medicines for many years. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about your own personal process with that, and then any insights you can share with other people about how therapy and working one-on-one in this container can be really supportive in complement with plant medicine work, and just to integration and as a whole, and as a fundamental pillar for really dislodging and unlocking the keys to be able to, get past our own inhibitions to see that true transformation and embodiment take place.
Thank you for asking that question and for picking out that particular piece, because that time of my life where I don't want to call it a transition, but I had this realization, or there was this understanding that there was more that had to be done coming out of, some years, or actually I think it was almost 2 decades at that point, to be fair, coming out of a couple decades of working with psychedelics in various ways. And seeing that, wow, yeah, I've been on this spiritual path for so long, but my life isn't actually making sense in the way that I want it to. And I'm actually in a lot of pain. And there's a lot of heartbreak, and my emotions are overwhelming, and my relationships are not good and not grounded all around me. There's bridges burning, there's like fires just surrounding me. And there was a moment actually when I met my partner, Anthony, and he looked at me. This was in the first few weeks of us dating, and I had been drinking ayahuasca, like, just religiously. I was just in love, and I still just absolutely love ayahuasca is a beautiful, beautiful plant medicine and spirit. And he looked at me and he said, have you ever thought about maybe taking a break? And I was like, no, I hadn't considered that, actually, because I was just doing what I had been doing, for all of my life. And I really hadn't considered what that would be like. So I did take a break. And in the break, I think, is really where a lot of that intensity started to emerge. And I think that there was a way, because of my own trauma and dissociative states of consciousness that I had developed as coping mechanisms, that my work with medicine was actually doing a great job of covering some stuff up and just sort of keeping me in this like heightened sort of spiritual high that I had to fall from. And the fall was really painful and really uncomfortable. And those months, 6 months to a year, was probably like some of the deepest depression and darkest nights of the soul that I have experienced. So I committed to the process of therapy. And I was so deeply in the throes of my darkness at that time that I had no idea what was going to come up. But I stayed with it and I kept going. I learned to even understand what a regulated nervous system state is and what a dysregulated nervous state is. It was like this unraveling the therapeutic process over years. And as I was just saying to you in our break, I started the therapeutic process when I was 30 and now I'm 37. So and I was just in therapy yesterday. It's been this unraveling and unfolding. I think of it as sort of piecing together my narrative, because there's a way in which when we experience trauma as children, and this, you'll hear every trauma therapist talk about, I think, especially like someone like Gabor Mate, when we experience trauma in childhood on a spiritual level, there's a way in which there's like a fragmenting in our soul and a fragmenting in our psyche. And every time a trauma happens, it's like another fragment, another fracture, another fracture, another fracture, until we really lose track of who we are. And we're just fighting to make some sense of our reality and who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. And I was really in that place. Like so many of the decisions I was making on a moment-to-moment basis were really coming from this very wounded place, this very fragmented place. And over the years of engaging in somatic therapy, I started to slowly uncover repressed memories that were completely hidden in my consciousness. I had no idea they were there. And there was a particularly profound experience that I'll share because I think it's really important to share this with people, even though it's like a vulnerable aspect of my own story. But I had a really difficult relationship with anger for a long time. I would express anger in really destructive ways. And it was my go-to. If I felt overwhelmed, if I felt triggered, if I felt scared, abandoned, rejected, sad, I would just go to anger. That was like the emotion that I was most comfortable expressing. And it was damaging my life. It was sabotaging my entire reality. And what was complicated about this anger is that I had developed a relationship with it where I thought it was my power. I thought this was my like righteousness, because anger's like that, especially rage. It's like righteous, it's justified. And the reason why it's justified is because when we were a child, something happened that caused us to develop this protector that is justified, that did need to protect itself. But the problem is that as adults, we respond, as we all know, because we've heard this a million times now, we respond to situations that are not life-threatening, that are not actually putting us in danger, as if they are that original threat. And so it becomes a dysfunctional pattern. And I was acting out that dysfunctional pattern in, any way you can imagine. Like, it was just going sideways. And it took years, took probably 4 years, I want to say, 4 or 5 years of moving through the layers of this onion and staying so committed to love and so committed to healing and not allowing myself to go into guilt, shame, blame, it's this person, they made me do this, like coming back to personal responsibility over and over and over and over, which is so painful. It's so uncomfortable to do that. But I kept doing it. And, it's interesting because it's like one of the gifts at the end of that tunnel for me was the reclamation of these repressed memories of where this pattern started and why this pattern started. And it was really hard to be with those memories. But what was profound was that I remember so distinctly this moment where I had been acting out the anger and it was disrupting my relationship and it was like a whole chaotic mess. And I was like, I need to get a handle on this. Like, this is out of control. I cannot do this anymore. And I started tracking in my phone notes every shift in my emotional state throughout the day and becoming this investigator into my consciousness and what was happening and what was triggering this emotion and how was I getting here. And I just followed this loop and scheduled an appointment with my therapist, and we went in somatically and we found it. And it was like, wow, here is this trauma from when I was 8 years old that I didn't know was there. And in the following days after that experience, it was like this disassociated state of consciousness just dissolved. It was so profound.
Wow.
So profound. And my entire way of relating to the people in my life, my own emotional states, everything I was doing, it just shifted. It's like when we talk about quantum healing, it was like this quantum healing moment, but there was a lot of work that led up to that experience of that dissolution of this very old pattern. That didn't mean that everything was fine after that. There was, as there is with any addiction process, because for me, it's like I was an anger addict. I was addicted to this emotional and chemical rush in my body. And there was one time after that experience that there was like a relapse and I went all the way back. And I remember after that time, when it happened again, that was when I returned to plant medicine. I went and did an ayahuasca ceremony with this ayahuasca church that I had sat with for the first time ever 10 years before, or 9 years before, or whatever, 8 years before. And I was begging the plants to help me with this, like begging, because I knew that at that point, I had done everything that I could do, like in my power. Like I had done all of the therapies. I had stayed so committed to my practice and so committed to the work, all the meditations, heart math, and somatic therapy, and walks, and working out, and food, the whole thing, I'm like throwing everything at it. But there was this moment where I had to really like beg for help and beg for support from the plants. And I went and I sat and I brought this little rose quartz heart with me to that ceremony, and I held it the entire ceremony and just stayed razor focused on that intention. And it wasn't the most beautiful visionary ceremony that I've ever had, but I had to go into this fear and this anxiety and what was driving this vibration in my body. And I'm happy to say that since then, there has not been any sort of relapse with the anger, and I feel in relationship with it. And actually in a therapy session yesterday, a somatic therapy session, we were able to go in and see, because now there's been some time and space, where my nervous system has been regulated. And we were able to go in and find some really powerful past life memories that were a driving force behind that, and then, do that work to re-narrate or shift the response and use the power of visualization and imagination to create a new story and sit with that. Yeah, so it's been powerful, and I think it takes all of the tools, it takes all of the tools, and plant medicine is certainly one of them. And I don't know that I would have ever had the vision or the spiritual acuity or the understanding to get at the depths of this pattern if it wasn't for, this holistic pie of the plant medicine and the therapy and the connection to nature and the personal practice. I don't know if I would have been able to get it if I didn't use all of the tools available to me. So I really look at healing and the process of integration as this holistic process. It takes all of it.
It does. It really does. Thank you so much for sharing more about your story, and so authentically and vulnerably, because these experiences are so they're so true, and they're so relevant for so many of us as we're navigating these processes of spiritual investigation and inquiry. And I love this element that you brought in of the recovering of all the fragmented parts of us, because this is so universal in so many traditional indigenous teachings and practices of healing, and this process is very much so this regathering and reconnecting the threads and reweaving back together the parts that were fragmented and separated through these impacts and trauma. And we all have, whether it's big T trauma or little t trauma, we all have impacts that we have incurred over the course of our lives. And the Inga people that I study with, for them, they utilize the symbology of a crystal. And when we are born into this life, our crystal is clear, brilliant, shining, radiant, and clean. And then over time, and this can be everything from, our parents' thoughts and their conditioning and the way that they talk to us, from life experiences, interactions, wounds, everything that we incur, little by little, the crystal starts to lose its shine and get clouded. And this process of the fragmentation is very much that. And so the return back to the crystal of the soul and the cleaning of that process. I love how you use the onion metaphor too, because that's very much what it is. It's like the peeling back of layer after layer, and the deep investigation that accompanies that process is so potent, and it does require this element of the radical responsibility that you mentioned, the radical honesty with ourselves, and just to really reiterate this part of. So many people experience these stagnancies when working with one school of thought or one practice. And oftentimes within plant medicine, what can happen is this element of cleaning is so potent. So we can feel like we've cleansed and purified whatever it can be recent. If we're working regularly with the medicine, what can happen is we make some, mistakes, or we fall back into those old patterns. Then we go back to the medicine, we clean, and then we feel good again. And we feel, we forgive ourselves. We acknowledge the pattern that we're continuing to feed and live. And so in that moment and in the weeks after ceremony, we feel that inspiration and connection and empowerment again from that nourishment with the plants. And then over time, we can fall right back into those same things if we don't have the skills and the tools to be able to continue that work of vigilance. It's like we empty our bags of all of our baggage in the ceremony, and then if we go back and we do the same things again, that bag is going to get full again. And that's not a sustainable way to work with plants, and it's also just not a sustainable way to walk a spiritual path. Not to be able to really see the true breakthroughs and the transformation in all areas of our lives that we're looking for. And so when we are having that type of relationship with medicine work or any practice, it's really an important thing to be able to take a step back and evaluate if these practices are becoming a crutch or a way in which to continue sustaining the very same patterns or the very same way of being. And so this is something that's really important to me. We talk a lot about it on the show too, this element of, studying the plants and working with plant medicines in the right way and what that means. And, my teacher says the very best way you can honor these medicines, my lineage and my culture, is by transforming your lives, right? And so don't worry about making a huge contribution to our tribe or by, going and telling 100 people about your experience. Just live your life in this healed way and bring beauty to your life. And this is the best honor you can give to these sacred medicines. And it's so true. And, so many of us are working with the medicines and have so much access in the West, and it's such a privilege and such a blessing. But there is this element that I feel to be really important when we're talking about right relationship with the plants, right relationships also with lineages and cultures that are not our cultural inheritance, is to do this in awareness and in the right way, and to seek out the tools and the practices to ensure that those ceremonies that we go to, or those blessings and opportunities we have to commune with the master plants in this way and go to other worlds, have out-of-body experiences to expand the psyche in this way, that it not just be for, a check mark on our spirituality list of like, I attended this many ceremonies. It's really, are we seeing that translate into our lives? Are we seeing the effects and the growth and the real change happen? And so this element, of the therapy, I think a lot of people who find therapy early in their processes of spiritual growth and healing, sometimes it's not effective because we don't have the willingness or even the awareness of what the process really can be. So I'm loving that you're sharing about when you found this practice and this resource and how you were really ready for it. And even with like coming back to the medicine and this, one thing that I think the medicine really offers is it teaches us sincerity in our asking and in our prayers. And so when we have this true desire to see change and we're ready to let go in totality, we're more able to commit ourselves to whatever practice that's going to support us, because we're just so ready to see that change. And that readiness is kind of what I'm talking about with like therapy doesn't really work. None of it really works if there's not this sincere readiness and desire to let go of whatever is standing in the way and truly face, the darkest parts of ourselves that are hidden so deep within. None of it really works if we're not ready to do that. You can drink endless amounts of medicine, and if you're, enjoying the spiritual high of the journey and the music and the community aspect, and that's beautiful. But if we're doing it from that place, then there's no really like true desire to show up and do the work in totality, and it doesn't stop when we leave the ceremony. So, really being in that place of readiness, I think, is like a key element to any type of work that involves spiritual maturation, right? And this process of maturation, sometimes it comes without us looking for it, just from like hardships in life and needing to step up to the plate essentially and like meet a challenge. But then this other element is this willingness to take our healing into our own hands and to really commit on a whole nother level to doing the work and doing whatever it's going to take to unlock and unhinge our attachments, right, to the suffering, really is what it is, and the constant cycle of creating things that we don't want to experience in our lives. And so the process of therapy, psychology, working with the mind, I think, again, like it really also depends on who you're working with and finding someone who has this level of spiritual awareness too. And I think, somatic therapy can be so helpful, and the other methodologies that really approach it from a different element of Western psychology too. And I'm sure you have like more you can share to help people to understand the difference of that. But the whole piece of the pie, all of the different resources this is really like a fundamental theme of what we really bring through in these conversations of the podcast, because what we're really wanting to support people in doing is resourcing themselves and really understanding all the different practices, the different methodologies, the different tools that are available to us to do this work and to really commit ourselves to this practice. So it's really beautiful just to be here talking about these things with you and hearing about your journey, and also just highlighting this as a modality for anyone who's listening and is experiencing or resonating with what we're sharing, because I think this element of stagnancy is something that's so common on the spiritual path, and sometimes we're unsure how to overcome that, and we fall into this kind of cycle where we're just doing the movements and we're kind of on autopilot a little bit, and we can fall into that even on a spiritual path. Even, you can show up on your yoga mat, you can do all the things and meditate and everything, but if there's not this willingness always of like showing up and seeing each moment as a moment for growth and transformation in our lives, each chapter is potent, and providing us the mirror and the lens from which to continue catalyzing and growing and evolving, if that isn't fully present and activated, intended to, then it's very easy to get into the autopilot, and to like fall back asleep a little bit,
Definitely.
and or excuse, like our patterns, or justify them, or say, okay, I know I need to go drink medicine and cleanse because I'm feeling this way, instead of like really just taking responsibility and willingness to say, no, this is the work I'm needing to do right now. This is showing up, and it's not for me to go off and cleanse myself or go do even like a meditation retreat. Like this is the study right now in this moment.
Hey Four Visions fam, taking a quick break from today's episode to share about a really special new Four Visions offering. For the last 6 months, we've been busy working intimately with our indigenous botanists in both Colombia and Brazil on the sourcing of a collection of rare Amazonian plants, roots, barks, flowers, and seeds. We just launched the Rainforest Herbal Apothecary. As we continue to deepen our mission of integrating ancient plant medicine into the modern world, we are humbled and grateful for the next evolution of our brand. Offering deep bows of gratitude for the sacred earth medicines and the blessed opportunity to share the healing power of nature with people from all over the world, we want to thank our indigenous cultivators, botanists, healers, and our incredible Four Visions team for bringing this vision to life. And of course, you, our Four Visions community, for inspiring us to continue growing. Visit our website to check out the Rainforest Herbal Apothecary today, with over 25 new, ancient botanical remedies in their raw form. Our prayer is that these new offerings support you in deepening your relationship with sacred plant teachers, by having access to their raw form. We are so looking forward to sharing more about each and every one of these incredible plant allies over the coming months and deepening our education initiatives for our community. But for now, go explore the new collection and let the plants speak to you. And now, back to today's show.
Yeah, that all just like landed in my heart and my body in like a really, really deep way. Especially when you spoke about how your teacher says that if we want to be in right relationship with the medicine and, you know, their culture and this way of knowing and way of being, if we want to be in right relationship with that, then transform our lives. You know, that's how to be with it. And there's that saying that we all know, after enlightenment, the dishes. And it's just so true. There's this concept in transpersonal psychology that I think relates to what your teacher's talking about. And in my first course, my first course of my PhD program, in the first like 30 pages of the first book, Foundations of Transpersonal Psychology, I got introduced to this concept. And it was so profound to feel it and hear it articulated in this like academic, westernized way that, you know, for better or worse is the culture I was raised in. And this theory is, it's called the transformative process. And it's an understanding that the universe is, we are engaged with the universe and the cosmos in a constant process of transformation and evolution. It is happening. Everything is changing, birthing and dying around us all the time. We are engaged in a cyclical, evolutionary process of growth and change and transformation in all moments, with everything around us, every being, every plant, every animal, every human, every star, every bird in the sky, every planet, our breath, everything is constantly changing, and we are transforming with it. And so when we talk about this concept of resistance and like resisting change and staying stuck and staying in stagnation, and this concept you're talking about you know, being ready for the change, when we're stuck in resistance and stagnation, we're not being open to this natural, universal process that we are engaged in just by being alive, just by being born. We are trying to use like our ego defenses and our personality and our belief structures to ward off this transformational process that is occurring whether we like it or not. And from what I have learned in my own journey is, if I can just surrender to it and just allow and believe and trust the people around me who are my reflections and who are my mirrors and who are my reflection of love in this life. If I can lean deep enough into love over and over and over again, like really, really lean all the way into love, then I have to believe the reflections I'm receiving from reality that I need to change. And resistance is gonna get me nowhere. It's not gonna help me. Fighting it, it's not gonna help me. It's not gonna help anyone. And so I think that for me personally, I've been able to remain engaged in the transformative process because I believe that I am engaged in this larger cycle of transformation. And that's a way of knowing. That's a way of perceiving reality. And I believe that there are astrological alignments that are gonna show me specific pieces of work. And I can choose to open to it and work with it, or I can choose to try and like barricade myself in a reality of my own creation. But at some point, something is going to break it down, whether it's sickness or disease or someone leaving my life or losing something that I had worked hard for or not attaining, whatever it is, in some way, I'm going to eventually meet it. I just know that. And maybe it'll be on my deathbed. Maybe, on my deathbed, I'll have to sit with all of my regrets and my guilts. And I would rather not. I would rather not. One of the things we say in the plant medicine world, and specifically in the spiritual practices of my Mediterranean ancestors, I'm Italian and Greek, and when you talk of the altar, my altar is really an ancestral altar. I'm very connected to that part of my being. And, these practices are like the little death. On Mount Athos in Greece, it says, if you die before you die, you won't die when you die. And there's a way that if we allow ourselves to die over and over and over, if we engage the transformative process, then hopefully the idea when we meet the inevitable end of this physical life, we will be able to just gracefully transition into the other realm. And we won't be lying on our deathbeds with regrets of, I should have worked less and loved more. You hear that. That's getting circulated on the internet, the 5 biggest regrets of those that are dying. I wish I had worked less and loved more. I wish I had been more present. I wish I had followed my joy. What is it like if we just engage that process now? And I think that's the driving force for me, is I believe in that crystal that we come in with. I believe in that. I feel that. I had this beautiful mushroom ceremony a few years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago or so. And it was so powerful. It wasn't even the biggest dose, but it was like so strong. And I had this moment in that journey of feeling myself like curled up in this ball in my mother's womb, like shooting through reality into this lifetime. And I had this sense of so much excitement. Like, I'm going down there, I'm going to Earth, I have this mission, all my friends are gonna be there, we're gonna do this thing, it's gonna be so beautiful. And I believe that I came in with that. I came in with this love and vision and pure joy and love for life and being here. And yeah, life has, whether my own trauma, the ancestral trauma of this body, that I remember as past life memory, like what has happened to all of the ancestors that have also had these bones and blood and skin, whether through that, whether through my own choices. Yeah, that crystal became cloudy. But I believe that part of the transformative process is that we can spend our lives clearing that cloudiness so that then when we leave this life, it's clear again. And I think that's my prayer for my life. And we all know someone who has, drank medicine hundreds of times and is not the most evolved or healed person in our reality. I think we've all experienced that. And so I don't think that drinking medicine or doing yoga or just choosing one practice and sticking to it, I don't think that means that we're healed. And I have a saying that I like to live by, that I'm dedicated and devoted to waking up by any means necessary. And so in any given moment, I will engage whatever is available to me. And that doesn't mean I always do the best job of working with all my practices. I certainly don't. I find myself, slumped over and giving up and like, I can't do anything right now. I find myself in those very human moments, but I trust the process. I trust the transformative process. And I think that readiness in me comes in part from hitting my own rock bottoms, but also in part from just trusting the process.
This process of trusting isn't always easy either. And we also have to relearn the tools to learn how to trust, especially for those of us who have, serious trust issues because of our traumas. And first, establishing this sense of safety with life itself, I think is crucial, because a lot of people approach trust as like trusting their partner, and they're working on trusting someone else. And it's hard to learn how to do that even if we don't have this sense of foundation and root chakra security and safety within life itself. And so there's so many ways to do that, but connecting with nature is one of my favorite ways to nourish that relationship of trust, and really honoring that when we're in trust and faith with the process of transformation that you're speaking to, we can utilize that as an ally or an energetic strength from which to navigate the most rocky moments and the most gripping challenges. Because it's not that our life just becomes perfect once we do this work and like everything is rainbows and daisies, right? The life is still going to happen, and the volcanoes are still going to erupt, and the earthquakes are still going to shake, right? But learning how to navigate those moments, and I think that that's also a true indicator of someone who has truly mastered this art, or is in that process of mastery, is not how they are when things are going beautifully, but how they are when shit really hits the fan.
Oh my
right?
God, yeah.
And everything is in chaos.
That is so true. I was just saying, doing this podcast today feels like such an interesting and vulnerable moment, because I'm having one of those tower moments in my life right now. And it came out of nowhere. I thought that things were going so great. We have our beautiful home that we've worked so hard to create, and our housemates, like the vibes are good, and I'm so enjoying like my work that I'm doing with Theta Soma, which we can talk about, and my writing and my PhD, and our relationship. I'm like, okay, like things are going good. I want to start a family. Like we're moving in this great direction. And then, I don't know, I guess Saturn moved into my 8th house, which I have in Pisces with Jupiter. And it was like reality just decided to like just hand it to me and be like, okay, all that work you said you've been doing,
Apply it.
let's apply that now. And within the past 3 weeks, I got a call from my dad that my grandpa's health was declining. So I flew home in 24 hours and spent 5 days first being with my grandparents in the last moment I would see them together in this life after they were together for 68 years, and having to lead my grandma, who is declining rapidly from dementia, into a memory care facility. And then sitting with my grandfather until he passed. And I wasn't there at the moment he passed, but in those days leading up to, literally up until hours before he went, and supporting my family and navigating family dynamics, which are our biggest teacher. What does Ram Dass say? If you think you've done spiritual work, spend 2 weeks with your family. So did that, spent 2 weeks in a death portal, holding my dad while he holds his father through his passing, speaking at the funeral for my family. And then I come home from this. It's this huge, powerful, transformative process, the dissolution of this home that they've had for 68 years, and the childhood memories and the positive, all of the beauty that came with that, just watching that dissolve. Even the most stable reality, has an end. And sitting with that. And then I come home and I'm like in my grief and I write this piece of writing and I think I'm really handling this, and my family is reflecting, thank you so much for being there. And 2.5 days after landing home from the East Coast, my little tiny dog, 7-pound Chihuahua, gets attacked in my yard 10 feet from my office at our home by a deer.
Wow.
This vicious deer attack with the hooves, puncture wounds, like so intense. I have to scare the deer off, grab my tiny dog off the ground. She's limp in my arms, dripping blood. I'm screaming to people in the house. No one's hearing me. Wrap her up in a blanket, jump in my car, drive to the pet emergency vet 45 minutes away. Just holding my dog the whole way. You're gonna be okay. Now trying to keep a being's soul in their body. Now this is the opposite. A few days ago, we're helping to hold the hand and usher the soul out of the body. Now we want to keep the soul in the body. So that was like just crazy. This happens. My dog's in the ER for a couple days. It's a miracle that she survives it. She's so lucky with the injuries that she got and the treatment she was able to receive. And then a couple days after that, there's this massive rupture in my relationship. And we have some big decisions to make right now, after 7 years of partnership. And we're just at that Saturn cycle of, what are we doing? And I'm like looking at him and looking at the reality and like, really? Like right now, this is where we are? But, as I'm getting more space, it's like a divinely orchestrated storm for me to really see where I am in my capacity.
Yeah.
And how am I going to navigate holding all of these different beings? Family members, pets, a partner in all of their different experiences. And how am I going to show up for that? How am I going to show up for myself in that? And I had a moment when it kind of, this whole eruption started and I was like, oh my God, my reality is wobbling. That moment where it's like, things just get too overwhelming and you're like, what's gonna happen now? And I just set out on the trail, went for a walk and found raven feathers on the walk. And I was like, I'm just gonna keep walking. That's all I can do. Stay with my breath, keep walking, try and stay in my body, receive support, allow my friends and my family and everyone who loves me and allow myself to receive that love. And I managed to, put a dress on and come to a podcast. And I'm just looking at that like, this is doing the work, and talking about it.
Yeah.
Not just pretending that that's not happening and that's not my reality. I was thinking about that on the way here. I'm like, this is a vulnerable moment, but I only have one setting and it's authentic. So at some point we're gonna go there. This is just me doing that work, even though it feels like a lot right now in this moment, reaping the benefits of everything that I have done. And I believe I have no other choice. I have to believe because I can lean into the poor me story and I can become the victim and I can blame, my partner, I can blame the universe, I can even blame myself. I can blame my past self for making the decisions that I made. But what if I just don't do that? And I just am with reality as it is right now and do my best on a moment-to-moment basis to root into love and authenticity. So that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do in this moment, is just be as vulnerably and authentically in my experience of what it is to be a human. And you're right. Even though I've done all of these things, that doesn't mean that the work stops.
Thank you so much for opening up and sharing in this way and offering your story as a opportunity for us all to navigate so many of these deep themes and really solidify and offer the details that can really help us to apply it to our own personal situations and our life. So just laid some cedar here for you and just blessing you in your process, and thanking you for your strength, for humbly offering it to all of us here.
Thank you.
And really just giving thanks for this opportunity of study and investigation and self-reflection, and the opportunity to sit together and be in community and learn from one another and be, really pillars of inspiration to one another by doing our work and by showing up, and even in acknowledging, the hard times and acknowledging the challenges and being willing and open to share them with our loved ones or the ones who we find that solace with. I feel to be so important and crucial to the authentic path. And you were speaking about, authenticity, and it's such a beautiful thing when we get to go into a more personal element in these conversations, because I think it really helps to bring it from the ethereal into the here and now, into the grounded, what's showing up in this moment, as well as, how we go into our lives and do this work right now, today. We can start or continue. And it's always this process of calling the guides, calling the tools, invoking, the strength, the spiritual strength to be willing and courageous enough to do it and to apply the work when these challenges arrive. And this is, the spiritual path. This is what it means to walk a spiritual path in integrity, is in this authenticity, right? They're very much there together, linked. And then the fruits that we receive are so abundant too when we do it in this way, and it's like very embodied experience when we are really, walking and approaching our work in this way. And so I just want to acknowledge that, send you many blessings for this period of transformation. May the fire of transformation ignite and purify, cleanse, and organize and bring so much beauty and vision and wisdom to your life. And may these experiences that you're going through serve as tools to navigate and heal and have expansion of your own awareness, so that you can step even fuller into your power and your medicine and in your service to others. And that's really why all of us are doing this work. Anyone who is in any sort of capacity of service and offerings to other people, the more that we, really embody and show up in this way, the more strength we have, the more potency we have to give a guidance or to help a friend or to offer our tools and our resources to someone else. And so whenever I'm going through these challenges, and I've had my share, I always remember this is a gift that I'm being given from life itself. And it might be for me, or it might be to be able to pass on. But if I do this work within myself, the fruits that I will reap and the jewels of wisdom that I will uncover will bless my path and many others, hopefully, in the course of my lifetime. And so it's a very beautiful thing to get the opportunity to really just go there in these episodes and these conversations, and uncover these elements and have these reflections that allow us to really see we're all just trying to do our best, and we're all just here taking it day by day, and doing our work together, as a community, as a spiritual collective family, and we're not so separate too. And we also get into so much of these traps of comparison and hierarchy of the spiritual community, and ego is also there. And so I love when we get to have such an authentic conversation, because it's like we're all just here, showing up. We're all the same. We're all the same, right? And like our challenges might look a little different, but we're all back home navigating our shit. We're all just doing it, right? Cleaning and organizing and empowering ourselves and walking together.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I feel that. I feel that this moment is, giving me an opportunity to really root deeper into, my path of service and to really see my strength. That's a gift that I'm receiving right now.
Yep.
To really feel that strength.
Yeah.
And to really see how far I've come. And to see the way that I can hold those around me that I love in their big transitions, in their own big moments of rupture. And that's really the gift, is just to be in our humanness. What more can we ask for?
Right.
And something I always say is that the future is woven by the choices we make moment to moment. And I believe that in, how I'm showing up to these difficult moments right now and how I'm staying in my heart and showing up to do, service and speaking and support those around me is weaving a more powerful future right now.
Beautiful. And, you mentioned your work, Theta Soma, and we also touched a little bit on this process of dream work that is close to your studies. And as we're nearing the end of this episode, I also just want to create some spaciousness to really highlight this work. And, the dream in working in the non-waking world is a very potent opportunity to traverse into these realms of infinite expansion and consciousness. And there's so much work we can do in the dream space, and it's a very powerful tool and element for us to learn how to work with all of these things that come up in our emotional body and our psyche. And I would love to hear a little bit more about the work you do with the dreams and then how it relates to the Theta Soma work and your offerings with that.
Yes. Yeah. So everything that I've been talking about really is Theta Soma in this way. Theta Soma is a transformative psychotechnology that works with expanded states of consciousness in order to heal and transform. And we weave the practices and tools of ancestral healing and dream work and yoga or meditation and breath work in order to access theta states, which are expanded states of consciousness, and journey within the body and within the mind to dig up information, whether it's memory or trauma or journey to another realm, another lifetime. So we use breath work and meditation to access these states and receive information, re-narrate, move energy somatically. So it very much involves the dreams. Really, the pathway or the aspect of Theta Soma that I hold down is really the dream aspect, and Anthony really holds the ancestral healing aspect. And of course, we both, weave in and out of that, but that's kind of how it has developed. There's a way in which, within our culture, we have been taught this lullaby that our dreams are just a dream. We even say that to our children. I don't have children, but people said it to me when I was a baby. If there was a nightmare, it's just a dream. It's just a dream. It's just a dream. And dreams are not taken seriously. They're seen, the definition within Western psychology, Western psychiatry, is that dreams are a series of images while we're asleep. That's it. There's no depth. And Carl Jung, developed this whole philosophy and framework around how to work with dreams as aspects of the subconscious, which is so powerful. And there are pieces of that I use in the work that I do, because The way that I see dreams, and the way that many indigenous and shamanic cultures also will view dreams and talk about dreams and teach about dreams, is there's like levels to dreams. And there's a level that's this like subconscious projection, but then there are other levels where we are accessing different dimensions of reality, essentially, and we can astral project and remote view and fly and lucid dream and meet people and have experiences and mutual dream, receive precognitive information. So my work with my dreams are really, I see them as my guides. And what I'm studying is the way in which indigenous and traditional shamanic cultures also use dreams as their guides. In Blackfoot culture, for example, there is, shamans are called through their dreams, and teachings are passed on through the dreams. That's how information is received. In the Aboriginal culture, the dreaming is not just about we go to sleep and we have a dream. The dreaming is an entire cosmology. It's where all of creation formed from, the land of the ancestors. It's the dream is so much bigger than what we think about it today. And I think about it like that. I really want to, a part of my work is to really help us to expand the concept of the dream from just images that float by while we're sleeping or a subconscious projection, to really understand that really everything is the dream. You know, we are in the dream right now. And my future is woven by the choices I make moment to moment, just like in the dream. Just how in a dream we can go in, if we're lucid, and start to change the environment, but we can only do that. We can only change things in a lucid dream if we can move past our fear and if we can become conscious. And so that's what we need to learn to do in our waking life, is move past our fear and become conscious. And once we become conscious, we can make different choices. We can remove that scary monster. We can confront it and blast it with love. You know, we can realize that it's not actually as scary as we thought it was, and we can actually be with this big, scary thing in a completely different way. And then it starts to shrink, or maybe transforms, or maybe we transform it and it becomes a unicorn. I don't know, whatever you want. So I see my work with dreams and in the dream realm as really part of the practice of how I am transforming. And, you know, I write down my dreams, not necessarily every night, but I have about 10 years of dream journals. And it's a powerful way to reflect on where I am and what's happening. And something that I'm thinking about a lot with dream work right now is that there's a way in which, because of this cultural programming around dreams not being important, that we lose touch with our intuition. We lose touch, we lose contact with the mystery that's trying to communicate with us in all moments. And every single night when we go to sleep is an access point. And that was actually shown to me in an ayahuasca ceremony in Peru, however long ago, 8 years ago. I was drifting into the ceremony. I remember I had this poncho I was wrapped up in, and I was drifting into the medicine, and it was just showing me this is the same as a dream. This is the same as drifting into a dream. So there's a way that if we ignore our dreams, we are missing a potent opportunity to come into communication with the mystery, to come into communication with our guides, with our subconscious, our unconscious, with our ancestors, all of the universe, this cosmic transformative process I was talking about earlier. We're missing the opportunity for what, like anywhere from 5, 6, 8, 10 hours a day to be in direct communication with that. And so I'm really encouraging anyone I work with lately, and specifically Theta Soma students. We're just wrapping up our level 2 Theta Soma training in this month. Actually, the focus is on expanded states of consciousness and dream work. I'm encouraging people I work with to really lean into the practice of the dream journal. And it's so simple. But what that does is when we have that notebook by our bed with a pen, and we wake up in the morning and we open the notebook, and even if we don't remember anything about the dream, it's just a feeling.
Yeah.
When we put pen to paper like that, we are sending a message to the cosmos, to our ancestors, to the mystery, to the unseen. We're sending a message that we are awake, we are ready, we are willing to listen. We are a willing student. And becoming that student is how we cultivate that readiness that allows us to transform. We have to show up, we have to wake up, and we have to put pen to paper and listen and do whatever we're instructed to do. And I have received so many instructions from my dreams of what to do and how to do it, and herbs to take, and appointments to make, so many. And it's really an access point. Dreams aren't just something that's fluttering past our subconscious. I see it as an access point to our spiritual awakening. And so I think that we need to turn that on if we want to wake up and transform. I think it's like we were talking about the holistic pie and all of the pieces of our integration. I think that dream work is as significant a piece of that pie as anything else, as therapy, as plant medicine, personal practice, etc. Dream work is a big piece of the puzzle because it's, in Tibetan dream yoga, there's this idea of waking up. And through working with our dreams, we learn how to wake up in reality. And it's scary. I remember my first lucid dream when I spontaneously woke up in my dream and looked around at the reality in the bright colors. And I was like, wait, I'm awake, but I'm not in the normal dimension where I am usually. And I was like, am I going to be stuck here? Am I going to be trapped here? Am I ever going to get out? And it was so scary for me at first to really, truly access that realm. And I tried to snap myself out of it, and I wake up like gasping for breath in my bed, like, what was that? Where was I? So yeah, I've had to really confront a lot of my own fear and anxiety to be able to work with my dreams. And, fear is really a driving force in so many of the issues that we're having in our lives. Really it comes down to fear of death at the end of the day. Fear of what was Odin and his ravens, which I'm just realizing when I was on that walk, I found the 2 raven feathers. And Odin's ravens, which is from Celtic mythology, Odin's ravens are Hugin and Munin, and they represent like the mind and the body, or the shamanic journey where there's the fear of death or the fear of losing the mind. And every time we go into a shamanic journey, whether it's a dream, whether it's plant medicine, whether it's through trance, whether it's through dance, there's a fear that we have to confront, the fear of death and the fear of losing the mind. But we have to allow those ravens out free to circle the earth. And we just hope that we have built a strong enough tether that they're going to come back. So, yeah, working with the dreams is a practice in strengthening that tether to the other side. And I think it's a practice in grounding our spirituality in our body. And it's a practice in bringing those lessons back into this realm. One of the dream practices I really love to share with people is that if you have a dream, and let's say you're wearing a red shirt in the dream, the next day when you wake up, wear a red shirt. It doesn't matter if you were like just wearing a red shirt and like eating ice cream in the dream. Like, it doesn't matter. The practice is to start to pull that information into the waking reality. And so over time, like in the Aboriginal cosmology of the dreaming, over time, we pull creation into existence through the dream. And it might start with a red shirt, but I'm still in the learning of what can come from that practice, because it's lifelong. This is gonna take my whole life. Yeah, I know that this is a way of knowing that has been quote unquote lost in Western culture, but what an easy one to remember, because you don't need any special tools. You don't need anything other than to just go to sleep. I love that about it. But there are some great herbs. Maybe you guys do. Some of the amazing dream herbs like mugwort or blue lotus. There's so many of these things that can support that. But it's a powerful practice, and it's one that really has become my guide in my life.
I'm just really happy that we're bringing this element into the conversation, and the sacred dream, so potent and such an incredible portal into our conscious and unconscious and the non-waking world, and just all the references that you gave to the indigenous cosmologies and the ways in which the dreams are worked with in ancient traditions all over the world. I'm so happy to have that here in our conversation today. Dreams are so powerful, and they are a complete study in itself. There's so much more that we could go into with the dreams, and I would love to bring that more into our conversations on the podcast, because it really is another resource, another tool, and just really honoring that study and honoring the dream world and all of its power to teach us and to guide us, and to learn how to navigate that space is an incredible path and doorway to yourself, to life itself, and learning more also about how other cultures work with the dreams is really powerful and potent. And so there are so many different traditions and a lot of different resources to learn about other traditions and the way they have worked with and continue to work with the dreams. I don't know if you have any resources to give to people for dream work.
There's a really great PhD dissertation called Blackfoot Ways of Knowing, which I know isn't going to be the lowest hanging fruit for most people. But it's really brilliant. Any search of Sonoy dream work. The Sonoy are an indigenous culture in Asia who have really done an amazing service, I think, to humanity through the documentation of their dream practices and the sharing of their dream practices. Robert Moss is from Australia, and he has many, many books specifically on shamanic dreaming and how to work with the dreams and recognize messages and symbols in dreams. Something that I find really interesting that I see over and over about how indigenous cultures will work with dreams is this way in which when a precognitive dream is received, often what you'll find in dream-centered cultures is there will be a community sharing of dreams, and so the tribe will gather, and if someone has an important dream, it will be shared with the group. And the role of the shaman in those sort of cultural contexts is to interpret the dream, right? It's to kind of weave together maybe different visions that different tribal members are having and kind of identify what's coming through. And then the tribe will make decisions based on what's being shared in those dreams, which I think is so powerful. I was reading a paper recently about the Dueño tribe in Southern California, who has an entire psychotherapeutic framework around how to work with dreams. And there is more of a Jungian sort of symbolic relationship that is so interesting. I don't know if Carl Jung knew about the dueño or what, because he's kind of an interesting, just open source character in his own right. He was pulling plenty of stuff through. I know there was definitely an element of cultural appropriation happening for sure, but I'm not exactly sure which tribes or what was happening there. Barbara Tedlock is a PhD researcher. She wrote a book that I'm reading right now called Shaman in a Woman's Body that has some really beautiful dream resources. My teacher, Dr. Angel Morgan, who is my PhD advisor, she has a beautiful children's book.
Yes, really just encourage everyone to check out any of these resources that she's mentioning. We'll definitely link them in the show notes, and as well as your offerings through Theta Soma, and we'll definitely make sure to include more information about Alexandra if you're interested in learning more about her work and staying connected with her as you undergo your PhD and continue that beautiful work. And you have a lot of incredible projects that you're working with, tending to the local tribe here and supporting in dream work there. So I would love to hear as these processes continue to unfold and continue to be in touch in this way, weaving together. But I just really want to thank you so much for coming on and being here with us and sharing your story and your wisdom and medicine with our community. It's been such a joy and a pleasure to have you here. And before we close, just want to offer you the space to share any final words or more about the Theta Soma work and anything else to complete our conversation today.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anthony and I are working on a new offering through Theta Soma. It's been a training for the past 5 years, and we're allowing it to evolve. This is actually the first time I've even talking about it, but we're allowing it to evolve into, the training will still exist, but into more of a transformational program, which it has been that, but we're just sort of, giving voice to that aspect of it. So we will be launching that some point in the late summer or fall with an opportunity to engage with us through ancestral healing and dream work and the process and practice of Theta Soma for your own transformative process. And astrology and cosmology, we pull all of that stuff in. It's really fun. We have a really beautiful, tight-knit community, and we go really deep. There's a lot of authenticity, a lot of honesty, and a lot of space for just individuals to show up in their humanness. So that is being worked on, and we'll link that, and you can kind of get on the list for more information about when the next Theta Soma offering will be. And then, I have my Substack. It's called The Cosmic Soul, where I'm sharing my academic essays and sort of spiritual musings. I just love to write, and I love to share this vulnerability through words. I've been a writer for my entire life, so it's really my passion right now is getting poured into this Substack page and really cultivating this writing and sharing it with my community. So please check that out, The Cosmic Soul on Substack. And then finally, I do one-on-one spiritual counseling sessions. I'll use tarot, I'll use Theta Soma, I'll use whatever is relevant for that moment. So I am doing some of that. So if you feel called to go deeper into your dreams or a tarot reading or just looking for guidance, I love to just support the process of self-reflection on finding what tool to use next.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of the Four Visions family, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation and have gained seeds of wisdom that will nourish your spiritual path. If you have a moment, please leave us a review, as this helps us to reach more people. For more resources and information about the plant path, and for the highest quality spiritual tools and botanicals, please visit us at fourvisions.com. We are grateful for your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you all. Until next time.